welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's The World This Week in the company of Christopher Dickey. The World This Week in partnership with The Daily Beast. Nice to see you again, sir. Welcome back as well to Vivian Walt of Time Magazine, Mark Dean of the Bloomberg News Agency, and Franco-Syrian photojournalist Amr Abed-Rabo here in France. It's already primary season, excuse me, for next spring's presidential election. One candidate who seems to be borrowing from the Donald Trump playbook. Former President Nicolas Sarkozy wants his old job back, but he's trailing his ex-foreign minister, Alain Juppé, ahead of primary voting in the right in November. Here he is in the French port city of Calais on Wednesday. In the past weeks, he's called for the UK border posts that he approved to be shipped back to the English side of the Channel. He's changed his mind on climate change, expressing doubts over global warming. And at a rally this week in the Paris area, he said this.
My father's Hungarian. I wasn't taught Hungarian history. My grandfather is Greek, and I wasn't taught about Greek history. Because I'm French, I love France, I learn the history of France, I speak French, and my ancestors are the ancestors of France. Now that's what I call assimilation.
His ancestor, the Gauls, who were there before the Romans. Amr Abed-Rabo, I know you have a French passport. Tell us about your ancestors, the Gauls.
It's quite interesting because in 2007, Sarkozy used the same line, saying, my father is Hungarian, etc. And he used the word saying, I'm a sang-mêlé, or something like a mixed blood, or a cocktail, you know, something like that. And today he is
a Gaul,
saying exactly the opposite. You know, he's saying we have to be French and period, and talking about the Gaulois, you know, what is Gallic, Gallistan?
The Gauls.
The Gauls. So it's in 5 or 7 years. Of course, the environment changed. You have Donald Trump, you have the Brexit, you have Marine Le Pen, who's doing amazing scores, and his speech changed. But I guess he's the same guy.
Vivian Walt.
Well, I mean, it seems to me like he's trying to carve out a niche which is already occupied by Le Pen. And she does it so much better than he does. So I'm not too sure what the strategy is here. Who now is his base? Because if it is simply France for the French, that might be too narrow a slice of the population.
But this is the point. Mark Dean, I'll put this to you. It doesn't matter what you say. This is what Donald Trump has taught us, right? It doesn't matter what you say as long as you're in the news cycle.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And Sarkozy's doing that. I think that, you know, we actually wrote a story this week saying Sarkozy takes something from Trump's playbook. I think that's a journalistic turn of phrase, and it's fine. Sarkozy's not looking at Trump and saying, I'm going to do this now. He just does it instinctively. His problem here in France is that it's going to undermine his credibility. It may work for him in the primary. It may rally his base, the right-wing voters, including National Front voters who can vote in the primary. That may actually work for him, but I think that medium term and when he has to cast a broader net in the general election, this is going to hurt him. He's been saying a lot of ridiculous things. This is one thing that, you know, just sounds silly. He's been saying a number of things. He's been questioning climate change. He's been, I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but his credibility is being hurt here.
All right, well, here's an item that won't help the pro-Europe camp, which will, of course, be an important factor come that election. The same investigative journalists who brought you the Panama Papers, finding in the Bahamas Leaks that the former European commissioner in charge of competition, who lobbied, by the way, during her tenure for a liberalization of the energy sector, well, she failed to disclose that she chaired a Bahamas-based firm that, funnily enough, invested in energy. Neelie Kroes' firm tried to buy the assets of failed energy giant Enron. It's what you'd call, by the way, a double whammy. Her old boss at the commission, this man, José Manuel Barroso, who's triggered outrage by his acceptance of the job of Brexit negotiator at Wall Street investment bank Goldman Sachs. Christopher Dickey, which is worse? Barroso going to Goldman Sachs or Neelie Kroes forgetting that she's the director of a Bahamas-based energy firm?
Oh, I think Barroso going to Goldman Sachs. Look, the guys get out of these
because he's done nothing illegal.
Yeah, that's nothing
he waited his
illegal
18 months.
He's waited. He
before
did.
going to the private
sector. These guys
sector.
go for the big bucks. I mean, you know. Hey, what's wrong with that? They serve in the government as long as they're not taking the money while they're in the government and they observe the laws, then I say fine. That she was in the position she was in and had a secret arrangement in the Bahamas, that's quite a different thing. That raises all kinds of questions about direct conflict of interest. But I have to tell you that outside of Europe, this is a non-story. Nobody cares. Nobody's even heard of her outside of Europe, except some of the people who are directly involved in the court cases that are concerned. It's not like, for instance, the Panama Papers, which touched such a wide variety of people.
Martine?
Which is worse? I mean, the thing is that Goldman Sachs and the head of the European Commission, that's just bad. Everyone, exactly, it carries around the world. And we could walk out on the street here and ask 10 people who Neelie Kroes is. Probably even today, 7 or
even
8.
In Paris.
Yeah, even in Paris, 7 or 8 of them couldn't tell you who she is. But, I think it's interesting, the day in this day and age, it always comes out, and it's a good thing. And I think it's hard. It's tough because institutions are just getting brought down all the time, and voters are questioning. This is also somehow fueling the Donald Trumps of the world. But
I mean, what an irony is that, though? We have a guy running for president who's bankrupted multiple companies, who's put all these people out, who won't give his tax returns, who's forced all these people out of work, and then we talk about other people's corruption, and he capitalizes on it. I mean, the guy is a kind of a genius.
It is for me. It's the real problem of the populism in Europe, because all these stories like Cahuzac in France.
Yeah.
And what she did was akin to, you're describing the French budget minister who on the floor of the parliament said, I don't hold a Swiss bank account. And of course he did.
Exactly.
What she did is the same thing. She testified when she took her job before European lawmakers, and she didn't say that she had this firm.
Exactly. And the problem is that people who are, let's say, left out of the growth, left out of the money, people who are suffering, etc. For them, all these stories are the same. I mean, the Goldman Sachs, the Cahuzac, etc. They're all the same story. It's like 1% of the people are getting more and more and more money, and 99% have nothing, and we're part of them. And they go after Le Pen, and they go after Trump, etc.
Well,
so
I think
that's
there's a
the real
particular problem, too, when you're talking about what they call la gauche caviar here in Europe, or when you're talking about American liberals. Why does it look worse for the Clintons to make a lot of money than for Donald Trump? Because the Clintons basically are liberals and are saying, we represent poor people, but we're making a lot of money. Trump says, I make a lot of money, and I don't represent poor people. I represent the working man who wants to get rich just like me.
I mean, I would say through all of that, you step back a moment and you look at the Bahama Papers, the Panama Papers, Lux Leaks, the Swiss leaks, etc. I mean, this is a very, very different environment you're operating in now. You do have the 0.01% of the elites, but you have them operating in a much more exposed way.
Yeah, she thought she wouldn't get found out.
Absolutely. This is not the 1990s anymore. This is just a completely different ballgame.
All right, so you're seeing the glass half full there, but we still have this credibility problem that everyone's talking about. And there's one man at the center of it all, obviously, who's José Manuel Barroso's successor, Jean-Claude Juncker, who our correspondent in Brussels was telling us when he made his big State of the European Union speech last week, had it written down about Apple in Ireland, but didn't say it in his speech.
Well, exactly, and actually, the very next two cases they think that the commissioner, the competition commission in Brussels, is going to go for are both in Luxembourg. Juncker's, where he was former prime minister. Now, when he took over, everybody thought that this was going to be a free ride for companies in these tax havens within Europe. Of course, it's turned out to be anything but.
So how does he respond? What does he do now?
I think he looks great through this. Certainly better than people expected him to look. They thought that he would try to block these
You have to
cases.
say the Kroes incident here. I mean, she was out the door the same day. And I think that looks good on Juncker. It's just, well, you didn't let the scandal fester in any way whatsoever.
But I mean,
but you didn't know about it either.
No.
So.
You didn't know about it, and but Juncker, he's going to be under pressure now because, contrary to whoever the next president of the United States is, he's unelected, and Europe now has a big problem.
Yeah, and especially because Juncker, you know, who's a behind the scenes backroom guy essentially in Brussels, and might do that quite well. But you know, the spotlight is coming with these cases.
All right, a 7-day truce has come and gone in Syria with no aid whatsoever getting to the bombed-out city of Aleppo this Friday. Fighting ferocious, missiles raining down on rebel-held areas, overwhelming rescue teams. The army appears to be preparing a ground offensive to retake the city. The aerial bombing, artillery barrages, helicopter barrel bombings carried out, according to activists, by the government army and by the Russians. While over in New York, that truce brokered by Moscow and Washington collapsing with a thud as Washington blames Russia for the deadly bombing of a UN aid convoy in a Red Crescent relief warehouse.
We insist on a very thorough and impartial investigation of the attack on the humanitarian convoy. Many said that it could have been a rocket or an artillery shelling. That was what the initial reports were. Then helicopters or warplanes were mentioned. So I think we need to refrain from emotional reactions and make comments immediately.
Yes. The coalition did hit people on Saturday. We did. A terrible accident. But I got to tell you, people running around with guns on the ground from the air is a very different thing from trucks in a convoy with big UN markings all over them.
Right there, an allusion there, Amar Abedrabo, to the bombing by the U.S. of Syrian soldiers last weekend. Latest statements after all that tit for tat that we saw. Well, Kerry and Lavrov, they're talking, and John Kerry says a little bit of progress has been made on Syria talks. Should he be talking to Sergei Lavrov right now?
I'm not in Kerry's shoes, but I mean, how can you talk with someone who is bombing a humanitarian convoy? And this has been going for 5 years.
Because the other option is not talking to them, and if you don't talk to them, well,
maybe it's
war
time.
Continues.
Maybe it is time. I mean, I've been saying this here many times, and I guess you're fed up with this. But maybe it is time one day that someone tells Assad regime stop. Until today, in 5 years, nobody told him stop. I mean, they have conferences, but at the end of the day, nothing is really done to say enough. Stop sending airplanes. Let's do a no-fly zone. Let's do something like this. This has not been done. Even this weekend, I mean, this is one of the worst weeks in Aleppo. And we're tired of saying this because nobody cares. We had, sorry to interrupt you, but we had last month a huge emotion about Omran, the little Syrian kid who was inside an ambulance. And there are thousands of Omran who died, actually. His own brother died. Do we care? Do we really, I mean, as politicians, do we really see signs telling Assad enough is enough? Until now, nothing.
Christopher Dickey, many, when they see how ferocious the fighting has been since that ceasefire ended in Aleppo, are wondering, did the Russians play the Americans? That is, have this lull, it calms things down, and then you pounce and hit them harder than ever before?
I think the problem is one of multiple priorities for the Americans. The Americans are trying to figure out what to do about Daesh, about ISIS. And they want to focus on that. They think that if they can take care of that, then they can move to trying to deal with Assad. Assad's interest is in protecting, not only in attacking Aleppo, but in protecting the Latakia enclave. That's what he wants to do, and that's what he's done systematically, and that's what the Russians are helping him to do. All of that goes on, and a lot of people get killed in the process. I agree with you, Amar. Somebody needs to say stop, but they do say stop all the time. Ban Ki-moon said it in the most forceful conceivable terms in his farewell speech at the UN the other day, but saying it isn't enough. The question is, who's ready to go to war to stop Assad? Is Turkey willing to do it? Not yet. Is the United States
to do something?
But not against Assad. Is the United States willing to do it? No, clearly not. And the American public doesn't have the desire to do it. The Saudis? No. The Jordanians? Forget it. The Lebanese? No. Who's going to do it? Nobody. So the Russians know that, and they play this game. And this is Putin all over. It's always push, provoke, and you can't hit back, or you won't hit back, and push and provoke. And he does that again and again. He did it in Ukraine successfully. If Donald Trump is elected, Putin will have everything he wants. Trump has already said so.
Okay.
So why can't he just push and provoke and wait? That's exactly what he's doing.
Vivian Walt?
You know, the problem is that I don't see what choice Kerry has other than to try to negotiate with Lavrov some kind of a deal, even though it seems so hopeless. You know, there is a reason why there are no kind of war crimes referred to the International Criminal Court against Assad, and that's because of Russia. And, you know, there's a reason why many things have happened in this 5 years, and that is because of Russian support, and that does not seem to be movable. And yet, for all of that, I don't think that Kerry can not try that.
Yeah, I don't think the Russians had to set a trap in making this truce. It, you know, it's exactly what, you know, they know that the Americans' hands are somewhat tied, and they have more troops on the ground, more pawns to play in the region, and they'll play them, you know, when things unfold.
All right, we're going to switch gears before we go. She said she would do it when she ran for mayor of Rome for the populist insurgent 5-Star movement. Well, now 38-year-old Virginia Raggi has done it, pulling the rug out from under Italy's bid to host the 2024 Olympic Games in the Eternal City.
Non ipotechiamo il futuro di Roma e dell'Italia, no, non intendiamo farlo.
We refuse to mortgage the future of Rome and of Italy. We cannot do this.
Quello che si chiede
To host the Olympic Games, or any Olympic Games, requires incurring many new expenses for the Romans and for all Italian citizens. This is what we're being asked to do. And to be quite honest, we do not feel like doing it.
Sono quelli delle tasse di tutti gli italiani, di tutti i romani.
Martine, I'll start with you because I know Canada's hosted successful Olympic Games and unsuccessful ones in terms of cost. Is she right?
I think she's wrong. I think there's a legitimate case to be said. You know, I've lived in London, I've lived in Paris, all cities that have bid for Olympic Games. And I remember, you know, in London, people are saying, well, we don't want the Olympics. It's going to be a pain. You know, it's an understandable feeling. I think part of the problem is the way the mayor of Rome went about it. She didn't greet the Olympic Committee. She went just across town and held another press conference somewhere else. And I think it's, you know, that's a bit beneath her station. And I think it's a missed opportunity because, you know, the Olympics, if done right, are a good opportunity to focus minds and improve infrastructure and improve a city.
She's worried about, she said, piles of cement and piles of debt.
Yeah, and she's exactly right, and Mark's completely wrong. I mean, the fact is, Rome is a total mess, and nothing works in Rome. The mafia was running Rome for a profit for a long time and doing very bad services. Ever since the mafia has been exposed, they've been doing no services. She has a disaster on her hands, and to say that you have a $6 billion Olympics game, where you're going to do, I don't know what in Rome, and you look at the record of Athens, you look at the record of almost every other city where there's been Olympics, it's a disastrous record of debt. And then that's even if you don't have questions of the mafia and corruption in Rome, which of course you do. So I think she's exactly right, and I think it's the best thing she's done.
All right, very briefly because we're out of time. 3 other teams vying to host, 3 other cities still vying, Los Angeles, Budapest, and Paris, of course. Should Paris host the games, Amar?
Well, after what Chris just said, I mean, I don't want to sound idiot.
Paris is not the mess that
No,
Rome
but
is.
of course, I mean, It's also part of the trend and of the atmosphere, because like 20 or 30 years ago, having the Olympics was something. It was like very prestigious, very nice, very money-making, etc. Today, if you ask anybody on the street, they would say, no, we don't want it. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of troubles.
Here in Paris?
Crowds. In Paris or almost everywhere, I think.
Vivian Walt, very briefly, yes or no?
Well, I'm going to root for my former home, which is Los Angeles. Perfect weather. They know how to put on a good show. And I think it's theirs to lose.
A lot of traffic jam. Huh?
All right, I want to thank our panel, Vivian Walt, Amar Abed Rabo, Mark Dean, Christopher Dickey. Stay with us. Our Media Watch segment is next. And we say hello to Emma James.
Hi there.
Earlier we got some debating tips for candidate Hillary Clinton. Make her seem to have a bit more fire in the belly. You've been looking at something else that she's been up to.
Yes, a rather canny move, really, on the part of Hillary Clinton. She's taken part in a show that's really something of an online phenomenon, Between Two Ferns. It's something that a lot of people haven't heard of, but those who have love it. It's a show by Zach Galifianakis, who is well known from various movies, including the Hangover movies. These shows get millions of hits. When President Obama went on it in 2014, 16 million people watched it. Hillary went on there last night. It's a very dry kind of comedy. Not everyone's appreciated it. And that has to be said to be the case with Hillary in particular. Now, I do have a particular clip from the show in which Zach appears to confuse being Secretary of State with being the Secretary of President Obama. Let's take a look.
As Secretary, how many words per minute could you type? And how does President Obama like his coffee? Like himself? Weak?
You know, Zach, those are really out-of-date questions. You need to get out more.
What happens if you become pregnant? Are we going to be stuck with Tim Kaine for 9 months? How does this work?
I could send you some pamphlets that might help you understand.
This has been a lot of fun, Mrs. Clinton. We should stay in touch. What's the best way to reach you? Email?
You've got mail.
So there you go, absolutely pulling no punches there with Hillary Clinton. Some very, very tough questioning. More than 3 million people have already watched it on YouTube alone and is being shared
so tell us, how did she
everywhere.
come out? How did she seem to you?
Well, it depends really who you ask. I mean, to me personally, I felt she did very well, but there just wasn't enough wit there. There wasn't enough of an idea that there was the twinkle in the eye and that she was in on the joke. Some people loved it. This Twitter user says, got to give credit where due. Hillary made me laugh a lot in this and was genuinely funny. This Twitter user says, it's hilarious. I've always appreciated Hillary's love of deadpan, but it is that very deadpan approach that seems to have left some people a little confused and a little cold. Has to be said, these are Trump supporters tweeting about it. This is hilarious. Even the Liberals are making fun of Hillary now. And this one, holy mackerel, even the Liberals can't stand her. Crooked Hillary is finished. Now, of course, those are Trump supporters, and you wouldn't expect them to enjoy what Hillary did. However, there was an element of, it almost seemed like she said so little. She started to warm up a little bit towards the end, but she really didn't have that much to say and didn't have many witty comebacks, unlike when we saw Barack Obama on there back in 2014 when he was chock full of humour. Interestingly, though, when I took a look at this article from the Washington Post, they spoke to the director and the co-creator of this show, and he said that actually Barack Obama had a lot more prior warning about what the questions were going to be, whereas Hillary Clinton, he said, was very laid back, very warm, open to anything, didn't ask for pre-approval of the questions. So that might in some way answer why she wasn't quite as funny and witty as Barack Obama.
Vivian Walt appears, you know, she's in on this sort of urbane kind of sarcastic humor. How does that play, though, in the heartland of the United States?
I think, you know, I don't really know, but I suspect that some of this humor is lost in Middle America. It seems a little bit ironic, a little bit kind of New York. And perhaps there again, it's the elite.
And also very much the young voters out there who she's trying to really galvanise, win some support, because it's not an area where she has that great an appeal. Vice News, which is obviously a very youth-orientated kind of website, says Hillary Clinton went on between two ferns, so young people will like her. Well, did it work? They seem to be a little bit on the fence as to whether or not it did. They describe her as having stiffly worked her way through some jokes, and they say that she's not as effortlessly comedic as our current Commander-in-Chief or even Jeb Bush, which is rather a damning indictment. This one, Total Frat Move, another clearly very youth-based website. If you've ever wanted to call Hillary Clinton out on all the awful things she's done, but you don't want to mysteriously disappear, you've come to the right place, they say. But they sum it up saying Obama was sassier and had better comebacks. But they say at the very root of this is the idea that this is a pro-Clinton video to make her look hip and cool or something, they say.
She certainly seemed to fare better than Ed Miliband on that show with Russell Brand when he was running for Prime Minister.
Ed Miliband never seemed to fare well anywhere, bless him.
All right.
We miss him.
Many thanks, Emma. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in The World This Week.